Hi everyone, I'm Susan Mulvihill. Boy, I have bundled up as much as I possibly can because it is a very cold, frosty, foggy day here in Spokane, Washington. We have gotten some snow, the temperatures have dropped, and so I guess winter is here early this year. But I really thought we should connect this week, and I have a few different gardening things that I wanted to talk with you about. So let's get started. As you can see, the garden looks pretty deserted, doesn't it? We have left some of the drip irrigation system in place on the tops of the beds, but they're not connected and the drip lines have been blown out actually a few weeks ago. So it's okay to leave them outside during the winter months as long as they don't have any water in them. But all of the crops have been harvested except for one I'll show you in a moment. And I'm also doing an experiment in one of the beds, so I wanted to show you that too, although it's under snow, so maybe it won't be very interesting. But yeah, we have pretty much shut down the garden for the season, and we're hearing it's going to be a very snowy, cold winter. So that's going to be interesting. And I'll take you through the winter with me, except you get to enjoy it from the warmth of your home. In this bed behind our little greenhouse, you can see those three upended pots. They are covering 3 of our artichoke plants. We live in hardiness zone 5B, and so it's pretty iffy to get artichokes to make it through the winter. But there's a whole bunch of mulch under those pots. We trimmed the plants back to about 1 foot in height, and we have crossed our fingers because we would love to have them make it through the winter. I don't know if it's going to work, but it's worth a try. And boy, standing here, I can see I really need to clean and repaint the frame on the greenhouse. I guess that's a project for 2021. Do you see these poor little plants under the snow here? These are carrots, and this is a succession crop that I planted this summer. And I think the roots are a decent size. Fortunately, in a few days, we're supposed to get up into the 40s, and so I'm hoping to harvest them. You know, they can handle frost, but you sure don't want them to get frozen into the ground. So I'll be interested to see what they look like when I can get back into this bed. Now, while I'm over here, I always get questions about these berries. So what you're seeing are cranberry viburnums, which is Viburnum opulus trilobum. And it is a native shrub. It is very hardy. The berries are gorgeous, and the birds are going to love eating them this winter. And this plant is actually on the other side of this arborvitae hedge, so that's why it probably looks a little odd. But that's what this plant is. It is an awesome shrub, and I heartily recommend it. I mentioned earlier how I was conducting an experiment on one of the raised beds, and this is it. Now I realize it doesn't look like anything more than a bunch of snow and a whole lot of quail prints on the top. But I was listening to the Grow Organic podcast a while back, and they were talking about putting the garden to bed for the winter. And they were saying a great way to kind of generate compost on the top of a bed over the winter months is to put down a layer of grass clippings, and then a layer of cardboard, and then another layer of grass clippings on top. And when I say grass clippings, I'm talking about ones that are from a lawn that has not been treated with any kind of herbicides like weed and feed, because that will kill your plants. But that's what's under here. Can't really get to it very well. But here's the grass clippings. Underneath it is cardboard. I guess I can't show, I thought I could show you this. Well, maybe a little bit, but cardboard underneath, grass clippings below that. And they're going to decompose over the winter months and late winter, early spring. So I will report back on you how well that works. But I thought, gosh, I've got grass clippings, I've got some cardboard, so why not? Now this is our little hoop house that fits over 2 of our raised beds. And ordinarily I plant all sorts of things to grow through the fall and winter months. This year, because I was so busy with working on my new book, I only got a few plants in kind of late, but I figured it was worth a try. In the bed, I'm growing spinach here and corn salad or mosh. And these ones you harvest the whole plant at a time, so I really don't have very many here, but they're very tasty in salads. And the spinach is sitting inside of copper rings. These rings are actually made from plastic drain pipe that's 3 inches in diameter, and then I have put adhesive copper tape on the outside because the skin of slugs reacts electrically with the copper. They get a shock from it, and so they don't want to have anything to do with it, and they stay away from the plants. Now you would think that slugs would not be active this time of year, but yes, they are. For some reason, though, I'm not having any kind of a slug problem at all, which is surprising, but I'm tickled, of course. So that's all that I planted this year. This is really pretty minimal for me, but I just was so late with getting it going and so distracted with the book. So, you know, it's the best I could do, but still we have some greens, and these actually were quite a bit larger. You can see that I have clipped some leaves off. But we're really enjoying having both the spinach and the mosh. Here's a close-up of one of the spinach plants inside of a copper ring. Now, one thing I wanted to clarify about our little hoop house is that we built it several years ago. It is covered with 6 mil greenhouse plastic. It is not heated. And again, we're in zone 5B, so we get quite cold winters. But one of the things I learned from Elliot Coleman, who wrote the Winter Harvest Handbook, and he lives in Maine if I remember correctly, is that if you have a hoop house or a greenhouse and you cover the beds inside with floating row cover, you have increased your hardiness zone by 2. So in theory, I'm gardening inside here in zone 7. You still have to choose very cold tolerant vegetable crops to grow in here. But it's something I enjoy doing because I love having fresh salad greens during the fall and winter months. This is part of my rose garden, and I wanted to point out that there is no mulch around the base of those plants whatsoever. I can get away with that because all of the roses I grow are own root roses, meaning they're not grafted. You know, the graft point on a plant is the weakest link, basically, and so they can be more susceptible to winter cold. But when you grow a plant that has been grown on its own root, such as these own root roses, they do not have that weak link, and they are extremely hardy. And even if the top of the plant were to die back to the ground, which doesn't happen very often, but it can, it will still come true when it sprouts up again in the spring from the roots, because there's no graft. You're not growing something on a rootstock. And so if you live in a cold winter climate, I heartily recommend going with own root or non-grafted roses. Now, in my case, there is a business not too far from where I live called Northland Rosarium and Rosarium Garden Center. That's where I get all of my own root roses, and I have had nothing but great success with them, and we've taken them through some horrible winters. We've had some where they have died down to the ground, and I think, oh darn, I lost that rose, and then up it comes again in the spring, and it grows better than before. So if you live in a cold area, think about doing own root roses. Now, one of the things we recently did is we put out our heated bird bath again, because we know how important it is for birds to get water both for drinking and, believe it or not, even bathing during the winter months. They do it on a nice sunny day. But this is something that actually is kind of a marriage of a heated bird bath and an umbrella base that you would use for like a patio table. We found that the base worked really well for us instead of the original stand that it came with. Now, you can find heated bird baths by doing a web search for heated bird baths. And so it's really not too hard to find them. And so what you're looking at here is not an actual product that you can purchase from either a store locally or online, but there are local stores like Wild Birds Unlimited that you can get heated bird baths from, and also from various online sources. It's much better to be indoors again. So the last thing that I wanted to show you is our dining room, which you can tell is not being used for a dining room at all. We had all of our amaryllis bulbs outside for the summer months, and then we brought them back in before the temperatures started frosting. And look, I already have one that has sent up a bud. That is really early. We have to grow them indoors during the winter months, and that's the time of year that they bloom. A lot of folks live in mild climates, and they can grow them outside year-round, and I'm so envious of that. But did you know that amaryllis isn't really an amaryllis? It's actually hippeastrum, and for some reason, the horticultural trade started calling them amaryllis quite a while ago. And so the name just stuck, and that's what we call these. But they really are hippeastrum. I can't seem to get anybody to catch on to that, though. But anyway, so I've got them inside. It's a pretty light room, and they are just sort of biding their time. This amaryllis bulb, or hippeastrum, is always the first to bloom. Usually most of these will bloom during January and February, but it's always nice to have a little preview. I've also got succulents in here that were too tender to be outside for the winter months. And the other thing that I have here is the top of a corn plant, and it used to be on about a 7-foot tall plant, and it really needed to be reined back in. And so what I did is I cut off the top. I've got it in a vase of water, and I keep replenishing the water. And then I also took a cutting of the cane it was on, and then I also have the original pot with the remaining cane that is sticking up out of the potting soil. And I'm hoping it will sprout something new, and then this is going to sprout roots, and the cutting that I took should sprout both leaves and roots. So I have high hopes for that, and I'll keep you posted on it. So that's what's going on in this neck of the woods. Thanks so much for watching today, everybody. Take care.